Friends, we are very happy to inform you that e-modules are prepared for B.Ed program at Telangana by the School of Education, Osmania University under Pandit Madan Mohan Malaviya National Mission on Teachers and Teaching Scheme MHRD New Delhi. It's indeed our pleasure to share with the teacher educators and the prospective teachers and get maximum benefit out of it. It's a first of its attempt by us. We continue to add many more such lessons to share with you all.
I am Dr. B. Bhagyamma, working as Assistant Professor in Department of Education, Osmania University. Today I am discussing about psychology of childhood and adolescence. The topic is gender equality, class poverty and media representations. We will see the objectives. To understand the gender transformative media, assess the difference between men and women in the media representations, identify the ways of encouraging equality, ensure that women empowerment in all aspects of the society. Commitment on the gender equality within media representations. What are the media representations of femininity? What do you mean by Marxist and socialist feminism? What are their beliefs over media representations? Differentiate between the traditional media representations of masculinity that of modern views. What are the basic assumptions on childhood? How they differ from assumptions on adolescence? What is the relationship between media and identity? What is the role played by the elderly people in the media representations? What are the different aspects of representations of the middle classes to mass media? The media representations of gender. Representation is how media text deal with and present gender, age, ethnicity, national and regional identity, social issues and events. Media text have the power to shape an audience knowledge and understanding about these important topics. This makes them very powerful in terms of influencing ideas and attitudes. Media plays a large role in creating social norms because various forms of media, including advertisements, television and film, are present almost everywhere in current culture. Gender roles, as an example, it exists solely because society as a whole chooses to accept them, but they are perpetuated by the media. Media representations not only are stereotype masculinity and femininity into very limited forms behavior, but also provide gender role models that males and females are encouraged to aspire to perform activities. Sociological analysis of media representations needs to be cautious because of the diversity of media representations of femininity. Women are generally represented in a narrow range of social roles by various types of media. Men are shown performing a full range of social occupational roles. Media representations emphasize women, domestic, sexual, consumer and marital activities to the exclusion of all else. The media generally ignore the fact that a majority of women go out to work. Men, on the other hand, are seldom presented nude or defined by their marital or family status. Working women are often portrayed as unfulfilled, unattractive, possibly unstable, and unable to sustain relationships. It is often implied that working mothers rather than working fathers are guilty of the emotional neglect of their children. The images of women used by the media present women as sex objects to be consumed by the male gaze. This media representation presents women as mannequins. Almost 70% of the content and images focus on beauty and fashion, compared with only 12% focused on education or careers. Traditional media representations of masculinity. A variety of media, especially Hollywood films and computer games, transmit the view that masculinity based on strength, aggression, competition and violence is biologically determined and therefore a natural goal for boys to achieve. Men are emotionally vulnerable, so the content such magazines often suggests that men are emotionally vulnerable and they should be more in touch with their emotions or feminine side. They should treat women as equals. They should care more about their appearance. Active fatherhood is an experience worth having. The media representations of gender. Liberal feminists believe that media representations lag behind the reality of social and economic conditions. They acknowledge the representations of women have changed significantly for the better in the last 30 years. Some liberal feminists have noted that women's progress as media professionals has slowed down in recent years. The majority of media owners are male and influential positions within the media such as media executives, newspapers, editors, senior journalists, producers, television and film directors and heads of television programming are also dominated by males. Marxist and socialist feminism. So the Marxist socialist feminists believe that the roots of the stereotypical images of men and women in the media are economic. They are a byproduct of the need of media conglomerates in capitalist societies to make a profit. The male dominated media aim to attract the largest audience possible, and this leads to an emphasis on the traditional roles of men and women in sitcoms, game shows and soap operas. The alternative images of women encouraged by feminism, example as assertive career women, do not fit easily into this type of media content, and consequently such women are ignored, devalued or treated critically. Radical feminism. The traditional hegemonic images of femininity are deliberately transmitted by a male dominated media to keep women oppressed into a narrow range of roles. This creates a form of false consciousness in women and deters them from making the most of the opportunities available to them, and consequently men's patriarchal power is rarely challenged. The radical feminists believe that it is no coincidence that at the same time as women are achieving greater social, political and professional equality, media products symbolically relegate them to subordinate positions as sex objects or mother housewives. Postmodernism. It focuses on the relationship between the mass media and identity. The mass media today challenge traditional definitions of gender and it actually forces for a social change. There has also been a new emphasis in men's media on men's emotions and problems, which has challenged masculine ideals such as thought and emotional reticence. So the media are now providing alternate gender images and ideas, which are producing a greater diversity of choices to people in constructing their gender identities. Representations of class. Mass media representations of social classes rarely focus on the social tensions or class conflict that some critical sociologists see as underpinning society. Representations of the monarchy. Contemporary media coverage of the monarchy has focused positively on every trivial detail of their lives, turning the queen and her family into an ongoing soap opera, but with a glamour and mystique far greater than any other media personality. The mass media representations of the queen are also aimed at reinforcing a sense of national identity. So, she is portrayed as the ultimate symbol of the nation. Consequently, the media regards royal events such as weddings and funerals as national events. Representations of the upper class and wealth. So those who benefit from these processes, that is the monarchy, the upper class and the very wealthy, generally receive a positive press as celebrities who are somehow deserving of their position. The British mass media hardly ever portray the upper classes in a critical light, nor do they often draw any serious attention to inequalities in wealth and pay or the over-representation of public school products in positions of power. The media focus very positively on the concerns of the wealthy and the privileged. He notes that the media over focuses on consumer items such as luxury cars, costly holiday spots and fashion accessories that only the wealthy can afford. He also notes the enormous amount of print and broadcast media dedicated to daily business, news and stock market quotations, despite the fact that the stocks and share, people are giving preference for stocks and shares. Representations of the middle classes. 4 broad sociological observations can be made with regard to mass media representations of the middle classes. So the middle classes are over-represented on TV dramas and situation comedies. Part of the British newspaper market is specifically aimed at the middle classes and their consumption, taste and interest. Example, the Daily Mail. The content of newspapers such as the Daily Mail suggests that journalists believe that the middle classes of Middle England are generally anxious about the decline of moral standards in society, and that they are proud of their British identity and heritage. So it is assumed that their readership feels threatened by alien influence such as the Euro, asylum seekers and terrorism. Consequently, newspapers such as Daily Mail often crusade on behalf of middle class people. Representations of the working class. Newman argues that when news organizations focus on the working class, it is generally labeled them as a problem. Example, a welfare cheats, drug addicts or criminals. Working class groups, example youth, subcultures such as mods or skinheads, are often the subject of moral panics. Reporting of issues such as poverty, unemployment or single parent families often suggest that personal inadequacy is the main cause of these social problems, rather than government policies or poor business practices. Newspaper aimed at working class audiences assume that they are uninterested in serious analysis of either the political or social organization. Political debate is often reduced simplistically to conflict between personalities. The audiences want to read about celebrity gossip and lifestyles, trivial human interest stories and sport. The representations of poverty in media. Newman argues that when the news media turn their attention to the most destitute, the portrayals are often negative or stereotypical. Often the poor are portrayed in statistical rather than in human terms by news bulletins that focus on the numbers, unemployed or on benefits rather than the individual suffering and personal indignities of poverty. So the coverage of poverty is marginal in that causes and consequences of poverty were very rarely explored across the news documentaries. A sanitized picture of poverty, despite featuring characteristics who were economically deprived, the family issue based programmers treated poverty as an aspect of entertainment. So the media often fails to see the connection between deprivation and wealth. The deficiency in the coverage of poverty is within the news. The poverty receives little attention from the media in terms of number of stories, and only a quarter of those stories that do mention poverty take it as the force, as the focal theme. Highlighting the impoverishment of the media, the report notes that most of the media use poverty to lend emphasis, sensationalize, and do little to further an understanding of poverty. A particularly pervasive trend in the literature, it suggests stereotyping of the poor in the news media. Assumptions on childhood. The media representations of different groups of people based on their age, children, adolescents, and the elderly people, also generalize and categorize people on the basis of stereotype. So the content analysis of media products suggests that 8 stereotypes of children are frequently used by the media. The child is learning experience begins by building the foundational skills of reading, mathematics and science, social studies, problem solving and social growth with fun, engaging and integrated units that are designed to make important real world connections. Technology enhances the pre-kindergarten classrooms with the children visiting the computer laboratory to expand their learning opportunities. Assumption on adolescence. Adolescence is a turbulent period for identity processes, especially in middle adolescence, age 14 years to 17 years, and for gender roles. Identity development generally involves figuring out what it means to be a member of the relevant group. The process comprising trying to understand and question and the expectations that society has surrounding one's fundamental group memberships, which can include ethnicity, gender, sexuality, occupation, religion and politics. Theories of group identity development coming from earlier theories of ego-based identity formation have suggested that most individuals through a phase of identity questioning and searching before they find the relative status of achieved or committed identity. So there is a whole media industry aimed at socially constructing youth in terms of lifestyle and identity. Magazines are produced specifically for young people. Record companies, internet music downloads, sites, mobile telephone companies and radio stations all specifically target and attempt to shape the musical tastes of young people. Youth are often portrayed by news media as a social problem, as immoral or anti-authority and consequently constructed as folk devils as part of a moral panic. Young people are mainly represented as a violent threat to society. It is very rare for news items to feature a young person's perspective or opinion. The media only deliver a one-dimensional picture of youth, one that encourages fear and condemnation rather than understanding. Moreover, they argue that it distracts from the real problems that young people face in modern world, such as homelessness, not being able to get onto the housing ladder, unemployment or mental health, and that these might be caused by societies or the government's failure to take the problems of youth seriously. Media and identity. Adolescents will often seek out relevant exemplars to help them understand what group membership means during the more uncertain stages of identity formation. And media messages are one possible exemplar source. People make media choices for a variety of reasons, including general mood, management and adjustment, and for specific purposes such as information, diversion or social interaction. The social identity gratifications perspective were originally conceptualized with age as the relevant social group. So the perspective has since been expanded to other identity realms such as a race, gender and nationality. Importantly for the present study, previous research found that the participants across the United States, Germany and Britain rated television series with a protagonist matching their more highly than those with an opposite sex protagonist. Media are an attractive identity information source because of the diversity in potential models within one's group to choose from. This is especially the case for adolescents with homogeneous families and communities. The media provide information that is missing in their social lives. Adolescents may select media, have exposure to the many different ways that they could define themselves as a member of their relevant group. Thank you for your patience listening.